Welcome to another edition of Radio Influencers, a podcast series we're doing for Radio Update. I'm your host, Andy Meadows. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of respecting the platforms we are on. But first, let's look at our top Radio Update content and Radio Update poll responses. A little slower traffic-wise on the site last week, but of course that's normal coming out of the holiday weekend. Thanks to everyone who did take time out of their busy catch-up days to visit the site. For the umpteenth week in a row, Tracy Johnson took the top spot. His promotions article, Contests Are Good, Games Are Better, Contests That Are Also Games Are Gold, came in at number 1, followed by Jim Sherwood's Enlist a Secret Shopper for Your Website digital article, and our Radio Job Openings post rounded out the top 3. My Becoming a Local Celebrity article was 4th, and I encourage you to read that if you haven't already, because I share a secret from Gary Vaynerchuk. I can't pronounce his name, but he is a brilliant digital guy, about how anyone can become a local celebrity by spending $100 a week on social media, and then he breaks down how to do that, and I tie it back into radio. The Weekly Wire poll question played off of last week's The Role of Radio in Severe Weather episode. We asked, do your stations do a good job handling severe weather coverage? A slim majority, 50.7%, said no, compared to 49.3% answering yes. So clearly that's an area that radio could improve on by implementing a severe weather policy and training everyone who cracks the mic on how to enact that policy when disaster strikes. Now let's get into today's topic. If you have any questions after watching or listening, email them to me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Regardless of the platform we are on, we have to respect that platform. Otherwise, the content we're creating isn't going to connect, no matter how well produced it is, how talented or funny we are. Because that comes across as us acting like we're above the platform that the audience loves. Otherwise, why would they be on that platform? That causes the audience to resent us, and it's the quickest way to come off as unlikable to the audience. On the radio, it's especially important because it drives away those new listeners finding the station for the first time that we so desperately need to continue growing our cume. Yet, I see example after example of on-air talent not respecting the platforms they are on. Whether that's the veteran on-air talent who no longer puts any effort into their show, doesn't show prep, shows up late, does the same exact benchmarks they've always done, and essentially phones in their show every day, quite often not interacting and engaging on the phones or on social media or on anything with the listener anymore, or the on-air talent who doesn't embrace the music the station is playing because they really wanted to work at a station with a different format, and they only took this job for the paycheck because it was available. Giving any indication that we're not a fan of the music the audience is coming to the station for, because they love that music, obviously, is a terrible idea. Another example is on-air talent who used to work in a bigger market or at a bigger station, ratings and revenue-wise, acting like they're too good for the new station they're currently on. Sadly, I've seen all of these scenarios more times than I can count throughout my radio career. The latest way not respecting the platform is happening in market after market is radio people who are being dragged kicking and screaming into the digital age. They'll post on the website and social media, but they're just doing it to check a box. They don't see any value in it. They're adamantly opposed to cameras in the studio because they didn't sign up for that. If I wanted to be on camera, I would have gone into TV instead of radio, is what they'll always say. They will reluctantly try podcasting, but they go out of their way to let the audience know they don't want to be doing it. They don't like it. It's a waste of their time, and it's beneath them because anyone can start a podcast. And finally, they despise AI and have no interest in using any AI tools, regardless of how helpful they are in making their colleagues and competitors who do use them more productive and efficient. Luckily, if any of those things describe you, there's still time to change. Instead of complaining and standing on the sidelines, start making content. Lots and lots of content across every platform. I know it's scary and you run the risk of looking silly, and you will absolutely fail at some of the things you try. But what you will soon find is that you actually start enjoying it. Trying anything new or doing anything we've done day in and day out for years differently gets the creative juices flowing. And before you know it, you'll start having tons of fun because it allows you to break down a lot of boundaries and get out of your comfort zone. For good reason, terrestrial radio has a lot of boundaries and barriers. We limit how long on-air talent can talk, what they can and can't say, and how they say it by coaching them on their voice, tone, delivery, diction, and articulation, and most importantly, the types of content they can choose to talk about depending on the format, market, demographic, and day part. Don't get me wrong, there are still boundaries for what we can and can't say when we're creating content on the behalf of a company that has advertisers, partners, and listeners who might take offense to what we say, but there are still far less boundaries and barriers on the digital side than the terrestrial side. Plus, there's absolutely nothing wrong with recording podcast episodes, videos for social, or writing website articles that you don't end up using to test where those limits are. On a recent episode of Fly on the Wall with Dana Carvey and David Spade, their guest, Bobby Lee, a comedian with 2 successful podcasts, Tiger Belly and Bad Friends, talked about how he and Andrew Santino, his co-host on Bad Friends, recorded a full episode they never used where nothing was off limits, and they said incredibly offensive things, knowing they weren't going to use the episode. And he talked about how freeing and fun that was and how it helped him kind of figure out the line. Of course, he did that in a safe environment because he trusted Andrew and the producers they've hired to help them with the podcast not to share it with anyone. Quick funny story and why you have to be careful about this. I did have an on-air talent one time that was really funny that would push the boundaries, but he knew the line. I never got a complaint from a listener, an advertiser, or anything about him, what he said on the air, even though he was really funny and really edgy for the format. But he did record a commercial for, I want to say it was a doctor or a dentist or something, where he created this character that pushed the limits quite a bit and would have never aired. And he never intended to air it. He just did it as a bit to make all of us laugh. And he sent it to the sales rep thinking she would get a kick out of it as well. She was busy. She didn't even listen to it. Sent it right along to the doctor or dentist, the client, or whatever, and the guy flipped out. Luckily, he was pretty cool about it when we explained it was a bit and we didn't lose an account, and it never got out or anything. But that is why you have to be really careful when you do one of those test things to kind of push the limits. But the point is, you can, with all this digital stuff, you can rehearse, which is a good idea to do with any show, a new show anyway. I've talked about that and written about that before, how a lot of new morning shows, team shows, they resist rehearsing or doing any what I call fake shows ahead of time to kind of develop the chemistry, and especially on benchmarks and the big stuff, it really helps to do that. So on the digital stuff especially, you can take advantage of the fact that a lot of it's recorded, a lot of it's pre-done and then scheduled, so you can play around and you can create things that you don't actually use as just a way to kind of test out how you want to produce it. As is the case with Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino, virtually every successful podcaster who rank at the top of the charts and make a good living podcasting do so because they respect the platforms they are on, consistently deliver a good product for their audience, and never act like they're too good to be a podcaster, even though a lot of them were successful in other fields before getting into podcasting. What do you think? How have you coached your talent to respect the platforms they are on? Or how did you yourself learn that same lesson? Email me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com and let me know. As always, if you have some thoughts you'd like to share on this or any other hot radio topic, submit an article about it by emailing submissions@radioupdate.com. Thanks for listening, watching, and reading. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Radio Influencers. Radio Influencers is a Radio Update production. New episodes are released on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.